Hey guys, how are you? Welcome back to One Stop Biology. So today we are going to cover the female reproductive system. I would like you to remember that we have already covered the very first topic of the chapter 3, which is human reproduction, and we are right now at class 12th NCERT Biology. We are right now doing the NCERT series, and we have covered the male reproductive system. So in today's video, we are going to cover the female reproductive system, right? So before that, if you want the entire notes of NCERT, which is curated and handwritten by me, please go to my website, onestopbiology.com. Okay, so let's start with the female reproductive system. Now, the female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries along with a pair of oviducts, right? Then uterus, cervix, vagina, and an external genitalia. And all of these parts of the female reproductive system is located in the pelvic region. So if you remember, the male reproductive system is located in the pelvic region as well, right? Now, the parts of the system along with a pair of mammary gland are integrated structurally and functionally to support the process of ovulation, then fertilization, pregnancy, birth, and childcare. So let's see about first the basically female pelvis, which has the reproductive system. Let's see the structure, the basic structure ones. So here this diagram that you see is the female pelvis showing the female reproductive system, right? So you have this region as the uterus. Okay, just below that is the urinary bladder, right? Then there is a structure which is pubic symphysis. You have urethra, clitoris, right? So remember, I will be explaining all the reproductive system structures in detail later on. Here you have the cervix. Behind that is the rectum. This is the vagina. This is anus. This is the excretory part. And here, this region is again divided as labium minora, labium majora, and vaginal orifice. So this completes our human female reproductive system, which is present in the pelvic region. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start with all these structures one by one, and I'll start explaining all these structures as we did in the male reproductive system. So now see that we'll start off with ovaries, right? So ovaries are the primary female sex organ. Remember that ovaries are the primary female sex organ that produce the female gamete, like which is ovum, right? And it also produces several steroid hormones like ovarian hormones, right? So in the same way, you can see that it is somewhat complementary to the testis, which used to produce sperm, which is the male, which has the male gamete, right? In this case, ovaries produce the female gamete, which is ovum, and it also produces several steroid hormones. Now, the ovaries again are in pair as like the testis, and the ovaries are located one or on each side of the lower abdomen. Okay, now each ovary again is about 2 to 4 centimeter in length, Now I'm talking about adults. So each ovary is about 2 to 4 centimeter in length, and it is connected to the pelvic wall and uterus by few ligaments. Now each of this ovary is covered by a thin epithelium, and this epithelium encloses the ovarian stroma. Now this stroma is divided into two different zones. Remember that this stroma is divided into two different zones, a peripheral cortex and an inner medulla. So basically now what we understand is that the ovaries are in pairs, right? It is located on each side of lower abdomen. It is 2 to 4 centimeter in length, and it is connected to pelvic wall by ligaments. Now, each ovary is covered by thin epithelium, which encloses the ovarian stroma. And this stroma is divided into two zones, a peripheral cortex and an inner medulla. So, this is all about the ovaries, right? Now, let's see what are oviducts. So the oviducts are also known as fallopian tubes. What they are known as? Fallopian tubes. So the oviducts, and then comes the uterus, and then the outer portion is vagina. So these three constitute the female accessory ducts, right? Now each of this oviducts, again these will be in pairs because these are connected to two ovaries, right? So each fallopian tube is about 10 to 12 centimeter long, and it extends from the periphery of each ovary to the uterus. So if you see in this diagram, let's see this diagram. So basically this is the uterine, this is the cavity of uterus, right? This is the uterine cavity. Okay, and this is known as uterine fundus. Right. Now these are the ovaries. Here you have one ovary, here you have the other ovary, right? And this tube is the fallopian tube or oviducts, right? So the fallopian tubes consists of isthmus, ampulla, and infundibulum. And this is fimbriae. Fimbriae. Okay, so now if you talk about the fallopian tube, what I said is that it is around 10 to 12 centimeter long, and it extends from the ovary. So it is extending from the ovary, it is going to the uterus, right? Now the part which is closer to the ovary, this part if you see is closer to the ovary, right? So this part is funnel shaped and is known as infundibulum, and edges of infundibulum possess finger-like projections which are fimbriae. This helps in collection of ovum when it is coming from the ovary to the fallopian tube. So after ovulation, they help in collection of the ovum. Now this infundibulum leads to a wider tube. It basically leads to a wider part of the oviduct, which is known as ampulla. So this is the ampulla. And then the last part of the oviduct is the isthmus. Okay. So basically isthmus has a narrow lumen, and it is the part which connects the fallopian tube to the uterus here, right? Now let's talk about the uterus. So the uterus is single, there's just one uterus, and it is also called as the womb. Now the shape of the uterus is an inverted pear. So if you see this shape, right, it is like this, right? So that is basically shape of an inverted pear, and it is supported by ligaments which are attached to the pelvic wall. So remember that it is supported by ligaments which are attached to the pelvic wall. Now the uterus opens into this, right? So this. The uterus opens into vagina through a narrow cervix. So if I have to now label the later parts as well, this is the cervix. This is the cervical canal and this is the vagina. Again, here there are three layers: endometrium, myometrium, and perimetrium. Okay, so we'll see this as well. So basically, the uterus opens into vagina. This is the vagina. So the uterus is opening into the vagina through a narrow cervix, and the cavity of the cervix is known as cervical canal. Right now, the wall of uterus has three layers of tissue. Right, so this wall of uterus has three layers of tissue. The external thin layer is known as perimetrium. Okay, then there is a middle thick layer of smooth muscle, which is myometrium, and there is an inner layer which has glands. So you can see that there are various glands present. So this inner glandular layer is the endometrium. Now this layer of endometrium lines the uterus cavity, the uterine cavity, right? So this endometrium undergoes cyclical changes during menstrual cycle, and the myometrium exhibits strong contraction during the delivery of the baby. This is all about the uterus. Now, the female external genitalia includes, so let's see what all things the female genitalia includes. We have already covered ovary, then we have covered oviduct or the fallopian tube, and we have covered uterus, right? So the female external genitalia includes mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. So if you see the previous diagram here, the first diagram, we labeled here various layers as labia majora and labia minora, right? So basically these are the part of female external genitalia, right? Now the mons pubis, the first one, mons pubis is nothing but a cushion of fatty tissue which is covered by skin and you have pubic hair there, right? Then comes your labia majora. So labia majora are flesh folds of tissue which extends down from the mons pubis and surrounds the vaginal opening. So this labia majora surrounds the vaginal opening, and labia minora both are, remember, both are folds of tissues. Now labia minora is under the labia majora. So basically these are folds of tissue under the labia majora. Now the opening of vagina is often covered partially by a membrane which is known as hymen, right? So this hymen is nothing but opening of vagina is covered by a layer, by a very thin layer, which is hymen. And clitoris is a tiny finger-like structure which lies at the upper junction of two labia minora, which have the urethral opening. So in the case of female reproductive system, the opening of vagina and the urethral opening are two different openings, right? And clitoris is a finger-like structure which lies at the uppermost junction of the labia minora. So it is just above the, which is just above the urethral opening. Okay. Now last is the hymen. So hymen basically said that it is torn during first coitus, which is the first intercourse, but it also, broke due to sudden fall, jolt, or in various sports participation, right? So now comes the last part of the female reproductive system, which is the mammary gland. So mammary gland, a functional mammary gland is characteristic of all female animals. That is why the name mammals are given to these group of animals. The mammary glands are paired structures, right? These paired structures are known as breasts, and that contains glandular tissues, right? So it contains glandular tissues and variable amount of fat as well. Now the glandular tissues of each breast are divided into 15 to 20 mammary lobes. So here the structure that you are seeing, this structure is nothing but the mammary. This structure is mammary lobe. Okay, so this mammary lobe contains clusters of cells which are called alveoli. So these are called alveoli. So if you see these cells, these are mammary alveolus. Okay, and the cells of alveoli only secrete milk, which is stored in the cavity of the alveoli, which is stored in the lumen of the alveoli. Now the alveoli opens into mammary tubules, and these tubules are of each lobe. They join to form the mammary duct. So here you have the mammary duct. Now several mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla, which is basically covered here, which is basically connected to a lactiferous duct through which the milk is sucked out by the infant. So this is the lactiferous duct, and this is the ampulla. Okay, so this is the ampulla. So this is the mammary ampulla and this is the lactiferous duct. Now the outer portion of the gland is known as nipple, through which the milk is sucked. Inside there is a layer which is areola. Okay, and if you see there are, as we studied, that it has fat as well, variable amount. So this is fat, as you see above and below the structure. Then behind you have the rib. There are various muscles between ribs, and this is the a major muscle which is pectoralis major muscle. So basically the entire structure of the mammary gland is supported by muscles and ribs, right? So this is the exact structure of a mammary gland. So guys, with this we have finished the female reproductive system, wherein we saw the part where ovum is produced, which is ovaries. Then we saw the oviduct or the fallopian tube. Then we saw the uterus, we saw the cervix and the outer opening, which is vagina. And then we saw various external genitalia, which includes mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. After that, we also saw the structure of a mammary gland where milk is produced once the infant is born, right? And that basically serves as that milk serves as food for the baby for various months or even years, right? And how the milk is formed inside and what are the various parts of a mammary gland. And we all know that it is a characteristic of all female mammals. So I hope you understood the female reproductive part or the female reproductive system completely. If not, do let me know through the comments on the video, or you can even directly drop a message on the WhatsApp number given in the description of the video. If you did understand the entire video, please do not forget to like it and share it with your friends. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that you get all the updates on this channel whenever I post a video. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.